I am Rasmus Benestad, a climate scientist working at the Norwegian Meteorological Institute, and I will be talking about local climate projections and downscaling and the way we do it at the Norwegian Meteorological Institute, and also why we do it differently to others. So before we start, the main objective is to try to estimate how much water this rain gauge will capture in 50 years or 100 years from now, like typically how much. And we have global climate models, which are our main tool to predict or estimate what the future world will look like. And from that, we will have to try to estimate how much water there will be in the rain gauge, or what the temperature will be where we measure it at where our thermometers are located. So the global climate models provide the global states of rainfall, or the hydrological cycle, and also the global warming. And since we are trying to estimate the rainfall statistics rather than rainfall on particular days, it's much easier to estimate how much water we will get typically in the future, because the statistics is actually affected by geography. And you can see here on this picture, this figure shows the global mean or global rainfall total for a mean year, and you see that most of the rainfall falls along the equator, but also there's high rainfalls fall along the storm tracks in the oceans, and also near the mountains. So the rainfall statistics is fairly predictable, even though the rainfall itself on a particular day is not. And also we have to apply something we call downscaling that relates the local amounts or the local statistics to large-scale situation. And downscaling is the main topic of this talk. And one of the big differences between us and other groups or meteorological institutes or climate services is that we make use of two different types of approaches for downscaling. And one is known as dynamical downscaling, and the other is known as empirical-statistical downscaling, or ESD. So our group works with regional climate models, and there's one called HCLIM and another one called Cosmos CLM. And this work involves collaborations with networks such as NORCP and also the Arctic Codex, and through projects such as POLARES, which is an EU project, and also PCCH Arctic, which is a Norwegian Research Council project. So this part, the dynamical downscaling, is one part of our downscaling strategy, and we make use of both dynamical and empirical statistical downscaling, because they have different strengths and weaknesses independent of each other. So when we get similar results in both, then we have higher confidence in these. And also, I will talk more about the empirical statistical downscaling here, because this is really where we are being different to the rest of the world. And as you see, we don't have any sort of network or international network for our work, but we have been collaborating with others through projects such as Sixpack, R-Cubed, and PCCH Arctic. And all of these projects have been funded by the Norwegian Research Council and involve Norwegian partners. We also have some collaborations with people in Gothenburg as well. So we started off with empirical statistical downscaling from this traditional way, and you see here this at top of this figure shows where we started, and then the traditional downscaling has more like less stayed the same, whereas we have diverged from the traditional way. And you see here, here's a time axis. So we started in 1998. So we have actually done empirical statistical downscaling for a long time, more than 20 years. And then the colors here correspond to the ones here. So in 2001, we introduced something called common EUFs to represent large-scale conditions in empirical statistical downscaling. And in 2005, we started to downscale ensembles of models, so global climate models. So the ensembles are many simulations with one or several global climate models. And here CMIP stands for the coupled model intercomparison project. And there were different phases, 3, 5, and 6. CMIP 4 never existed. And then in 2007, we started to downscale parameters of PDFs, or the probability density functions, which we refer to as climate, as opposed to the weather approach, where we used to downscale day by day or month by month. Now we downscale the parameters of PDFs which have been aggregated on, say, annual or seasonal basis. And lastly, we also make use of principal component analysis, PCA, to represent local data, and that has several benefits, which I will present later. So the strategy and methods that we use have evolved over the last 20 years, and I would say now that they are mature for climate change adaptation, and I'll come back to that later. And also the way we do the downscaling, both when it comes to making use of both regional climate models, dynamical downscaling, and empirical statistical downscaling, and together, but also the way we do the empirical statistical downscaling are different from the rest of the international community. And one good question is then, why did we actually diverge from the traditional ways? And there's a good reason for that. So by using what we call the common empirical orthogonal functions, or common EUFs, we make use of both reanalysis and global climate models. And you see here that the rainfall over an area can be represented as a set of maps, and which have different weights. So sometimes one map is more strongly present and others are toned down, or sometimes other maps are more strongly present. So it's a weighted sum of various maps, and one of the weights is these numbers there. These are eigenvalues. So the leading map represents most of the variance, so most of the action, and then higher order maps represent less and less action. And the fact is that the first 5 maps actually can recover most of the rainfall in this area, so we can actually save a lot of volume of data by just keeping some of the maps, which are the most important ones. And then the bottom line here, you see a time series. These are indices, one for each of the maps, which says something about how strongly present they are at any time. So you have, say, for 5 maps, you would have 5 such indices here. And the black line represents the ERA 5 reanalysis. So this is basically what has been observed. And the red curve here shows the corresponding weights for the global climate models, the GCM. And what is clever about this is that these indices here represent exactly the same spatial pattern, which is shown here for both ERA 5 and GCMs. And these eigenvalues also represent the how much each pattern dominate, both for ERA 5 and GCM. So basically, these can be seen as sort of fingerprints of the rainfall patterns, and this is a way of distilling information and making use of redundancy, because you see that when it rains here, it also rains here. So there's a lot of you can boil down the amount of information into less data volume, and this is also can facilitate an evaluation of the global climate models, because if they are very different, then you would see these points there be like there would be two pairs quite similar, but also then you would see that these indices here would be very different. They would have different variance and also different means. So basically, by applying common UFs, we compare the spatio-temporal covariance structure in the data observed, but also those provided by the model. We applied the empirical statistical downscaling to large multimodal ensembles because they don't require lots of computation power. So then it's easy to design the methods so that we can have a large set of global climate models, model results in a catalog, and then the downscaling would make use will downscale each of them, just looping through the whole lot. And that makes us able to beat the law of small numbers, because if we only downscale a small number of global climate models, you see that because there are like natural variability in the observations and also in the models, they reproduce the same thing. Then because on a local basis, these natural variability variations are stochastic, so they're not you can't predict exactly how they go. And they will affect the results. So then you may get some results like too low or too high. So if you have too small a sample, you don't really get a representative picture. And also by downscaling a large number of global climate models, we need to evaluate the downscale ensemble. And the way we do that is, for starters, we look at the traditional way of doing it, and then we look at the cross-validation evaluation. So here are correlation scores, and so the leading modes of the common UFs all have scores of almost 1, which is very, very good. And then a second map, or a second order, has some correlation scores which are around 0.8, 0.9, which is also quite good. But this pattern has a smaller role in these results. And a third mode here has a cross-validation correlation between 0.5 and 0.8, and this carries even less weight than the first one. So you see that here the red area here represents the downscaled ensemble, and because each year is fairly random, if it's high up or further down, we can actually look at the 5 and 95 percentile range of these results, and they vary little from year to year. And then we can look at the observations which fall outside these confidence limits, and we can count them. And if they had the same statistics, then we would expect 10% to be outside. And then we can use a binomial distribution to actually estimate how many we should see, and how that the total number deviates from the agreement. And also for each downscaled global climate model, we get a trend over the same period as we have for the observations. So here we got 151 different trends from the models and one for the observations. And then we can use a traditional statistical test to see if they agree. And this symbol up here shows the comparison of the observations with the downscaled ensemble. So you see the trend is fairly similar to those of the observations, whereas this axis here shows the variability, or the interannual variability, and you see that there are quite a few observations there. They are actually have like a faint gray circle outside, or ring outside the black symbols. So they are slightly too many. So the interval variability is not perfect, but it's not very bad. So when we downscale the climate or the probability distribution function, basically we're trying to estimate probabilities of, say, high temperatures or high rainfall. So the gray line here shows a probability distribution function is a Gaussian for the typically for daily temperature, and we have the mean value, and also we have a standard deviation. And then we can imagine that a climate change would be a shift in these statistics here, or in the probabilities, with a higher mean value and also maybe a higher standard deviation. For rainfall, for rainfall is different to temperature, because we don't have rain every day all the time, whereas we always have temperature. So this would be we would always have like statistics representing temperature at any day, whereas for rainfall we can split the days into when it rains and when it doesn't rain, and we can describe this split with the wet day frequency, so we know how often when it rains. And for a rainy day, then we can look at the distribution of rainfall. There's no negative rainfall, so basically we have this exponential distribution, which explains fairly well, describes fairly well the daily rainfall here. And then we can imagine like that the mean may change and increase, and then that would make this function sort of slide down here, and there will be higher probability of getting more and less probability of getting smaller amounts, unless we also get a change in the wet day frequency, then both could change as well. So the probabilities are estimated from statistical properties, which are predictable, and also by downscaling these parameters here, we get more robust results. And also we see that for decision making, probabilities are more easier to make use of than, say, time series. Here we can see like for temperature, we see again typical patterns which are fairly predictable for the mean temperature here. So to represent local data, we use principal component analysis, and that preserves the spatial structures, and also we get a high scale and high cross-validation results. So here is one example for the Nordic countries. These are temperatures in the winter, and we do a multiple regression analysis, a stepwise one, against like the reanalysis, and we get like fairly similar picture with the reanalysis. And the cross-validation test gives an excellent score here. So if it would be perfect if all the symbols were on this diagonal. So a correlation of 0.99 is very good. And also another test is to, when we calibrate the model, we remove the trend and then apply the calibration to detrended data. And then once we have calibrated the model, we use the original data with trend as input, and then try to predict the long-term change as we see here. So then we can actually test the stationarity assumptions that the link between large scale and small scale stays the same in the future. And here you see this is pretty good result. So then this is for the leading the principal component analysis for the temperature, and that explains most of the variability of the temperature in the Nordic countries. So the strongest variations you will see in the interior part, and then smaller variations along the coast there, which are the temperature variations are more moderated there. So we can also grid the scenarios that we downscale with empirical statistical downscaling. So we can grid temperature or precipitation, and then we grid their statistical properties, for instance, the mean, standard deviation, or the wet day frequency and wet day mean. Then we can do that for large multimodal ensembles. And we have 151 runs here for the time periods between 1951 and 2050. And we have a new model for archiving big data. So in this case, we have, around 1,000 downscaled runs, and these have been gridded on an 8 kilometer by 8 kilometer grid for the period 1951 to 2055. And all of that takes only 475 megabytes, which is much, much smaller than it would have taken if you had stored all of these in separate netcdf files. And also by storing it this way, it's really, really fast. So basically what we're storing are EUFs of these gridded results for the multimodal ensemble. So this example shows the 95 percentile of the wintertime surface temperature projected for year 2050, and this is based on the CMIP6 SSP 370. You would never be able to get this kind of result from, say, an ensemble of dynamical downscaling, because you would not have enough models to estimate the 95 percentile. So this would typically represents or show what kind of temperatures you would see for a warm winter around year 2050, like say one winter in 20 years and a warm one. And also we have downscaled other things. For instance, we can apply empirical statistical downscaling to downscale storm track density. So this is what one of my colleagues did. She did it two ways. One by using mean sea level pressure as predictors, and the other one 500 hectopascal geopotential height as predictor. And the results are fairly different. So this was for a CMIP5 ensembles. And the reason for the difference here is that the geopotential heights, they will increase when the temperature also rises, and then they will give a wrong impression. So the mean sea level pressure is probably the most correct picture here, and this is different. This is a year which is not very active, and this is an active year, and this is like a sort of medium year. We can also downscale other types of probabilities. Here it's the statistics for intense rainfall. And if we can get some good results for the wet day mean precipitation and the wet day frequency, then we can estimate curves for intensity, duration, frequency. So this example here is Beck and Song, and it shows the change between 1950 and 2050 here. So this is 1950, these are 2050. So what we do, we have this formula here which predicts the shape of these curves. So we need to know the wet day frequency and wet day mean, and we have there are some estimates of alpha already. L here is basically the number of hours, so that's the duration or the length of the duration, and tau is the return level. So that's the difference curves here. So if we can get the local estimate of wet day mean and wet day frequency, then we can get a sort of rule of thumb for the intensity, duration, and frequency curves. So just a summary. the approach of downscaling at the Norwegian Meteorological Institute is to combine dynamical downscaling with empirical statistical downscaling. And here you see one example for Poland, and you see the blue results here are the Eurocodex. So these are dynamical downscaled results. So there are I think 9 runs, because they take a lot of computational resources, so there's a limit to how many that can be run. And then we have all the GCMs, the global climate models, and here are the Eurocodex results, so dynamical downscaled, and the gray line, the grain area here shows the empirical statistical downscale results for the entire ensemble. So this is the RCP 8.5. So there are 81 runs here, and then we have also the global climate models for the same runs as those in Eurocodex, and it's fairly similar. But there's a slight shift in the range here, and then the red ones are the empirical statistical downscaling for the common models there. As you can see, there's one high up here, but the others are fairly similar to the RCMs. But we see that just having a small number of models would actually give us a misleading results, because they don't give the whole range, and basically this is the law of small numbers kicking in. Also, another thing that we have done in Norway is to use something called reality, where we take results from the dynamical downscaling and use them to train the empirical statistical downscaling to both test the methods, but also to try to expand the number of downscaled results. And in addition, we have used something we call stress testing, where we move storms from historical times where we knew there were strong events to new sites, which can be used to test the preparedness or like how well the society would withstand this kind of situation. And then also sensitivity testing is important. We have new levels of evaluation, so we have 9 levels of evaluating the results to make sure that they are reliable. So we have already covered the cross-validation and also the trending, and then we mentioned the common UFs to check that the global climate models actually reproducing the covariance structure that we see in the reanalysis. And then we have also tests to see whether the downscale ensembles can are corresponding with the observed trends for the past, but also like the interannual variability, so like the variance is the same. But there are also other tests like to check the distribution of the parameters, but also like that the temperature is almost normally distributed, and also the rainfall is close to exponential distributed as well. So our approach of downscaling makes better use of information, and we include more information which is relevant than others. And it's a unique strategy which we believe will give more robust results.